Straight talk from Israel. You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio. You're listening to The Jay Shapiro Show.
Hello again. This is Jay Shapiro. Thanks for listening. Many years ago, Israel's Foreign Minister Moshe Aarons made a famous statement that had a lot of meaning. He said, "The Middle East is not the Middle West." The Middle East is a turbulent area that's been the locale of many clashes, some religious, some national, some both religious and national, pretty much since the beginning of recorded history. Historians like to say that the Middle East is the birthplace of civilization as we know it, that is, Western civilization. That also means it's the birthplace of conflict. Now, there are two opposing trends taking place here now. One is getting a lot of publicity, and rightly so. The other is getting relatively little publicity, but it is extremely important. The one getting the publicity is the series of historical and groundbreaking agreements signed between Israel and the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain, which will hopefully be followed by similar agreements between Israel and other Muslim countries. The one not getting much publicity is the aggressive role that Turkey is playing in this area of the world, the turn of Turkey toward dictatorship, and even more significant is the return of fundamental Islam to Turkey. After the end of the First World War and the end of the Ottoman Empire, Turkey has been, or at least the government level and the leadership level, has been on a path toward secularism. All this has changed under the present regime, and changed markedly so. It does not augur well for a number of countries in this area, including Greece, Cyprus, and of course Israel. I want to say a few words about this because it is of great importance for this area and it should get more attention. I'll be back after the break. Thanks again for listening.
The return of the Jewish people to the land of Israel was prophesied in the Bible thousands of years ago and is coming true today. Shalom. Join me, Josh Wander, on Israel Unplugged. Listen in as we delve into the spiritual and physical aspects of the Jewish return to Zion. We'll discuss the biblically mandated, historic, and of course practical understandings of this incredible transition from exile to redemption. That's Israel Unplugged, every Monday on IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com.
You're listening to The Jay Shapiro Show.
Hello again, you're back with Jay Shapiro. The title of this segment of my program may sound odd, but it's quite serious. The title I've given it is The Relationship Between the President of the United States Health and Peace in the Middle East. As we know, the American administration has negotiated a peace agreement between Israel and Bahrain and United Arab Emirates. Now, last week, the Trump administration announced that a Lebanese-Israel agreement to hold the first direct talks in 30 years over their maritime dispute. For the first time in 30 years, Israel and Lebanon have agreed to begin negotiations to end the long-running dispute over their maritime borders. Officials from both countries and the United States made the announcement of the upcoming talks last week. Negotiations are expected to start around October 12th. The talks between the two countries, which have no diplomatic ties at the moment and are technically in a state of ongoing war, these talks will be mediated by the United States and hosted by the United Nations. The significance of this breakthrough should not be belittled. Many officials and commentators have noted that the Lebanese agreement to the talks comes amid a severe economic crisis in Lebanon due to sanctions on Lebanon, which is virtually controlled by Hezbollah, which is a Shiite terrorist organization with ties to Iran. It also follows the devastating explosion at the port of Beirut in August, in which hundreds lost their lives, thousands were injured, and some 250,000 people were made homeless. The explosions, like many other Lebanese woes, were also related to Hezbollah's corruption and its hold over Lebanon. The negotiations with Israel relate to an area in the eastern Mediterranean known as Block 9, where Israel is developing its natural gas resources. Now, among the many questions that have arisen since the American president has been diagnosed as having the COVID-19 pandemic, what is its impact, if any, on these deals, both the ones that were signed already with Bahrain and the United Arab Emirates, and the ones that could be signed? Timing here is very significant. Putting aside the pandemic itself, the largest factor that has influenced the schedule is the November 3rd election. Part of Trump's first election campaign and re-election campaign has been the portrayal of Trump as a skilled dealmaker. That's what he brags about all the time. His administration's ability to broker two deals between Israel and two Arab countries plays into that picture. Trump has touted the Abraham Accords, which is what deals with the UAE and Bahrain are known as. In his speeches now in this campaign, before he was taken ill, he mentions the success he has had, noting that no other president has achieved twin deals between Israel and its neighbors. That is on top of the fact that outside of these accords, Israel has only two existing deals with its neighbors. It has an Egyptian accord in 1979 and a Jordanian agreement in 1994. These accords, which have their biblical focus on uniting the children of Abraham, have also been designed to boost the electoral support among evangelicals in the United States. That is a big part, a big block of the Republicans' vote, of the president's support. And by the way, Trump has already been nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize for his achievement. They've been launched, these agreements with UAE and Bahrain, and they have bipartisan support in the United States, and they already have power to sway the voters. That's a major accomplishment that Trump has achieved. Now, we understand that other deals already are in the works. They're under the auspices of a team that remains functional despite Trump's illness, and that will likely to continue to function. Last week, while Washington reeled from the news of Trump's illness, the Sudanese leader spoke of ties with Israel on the same day he met with U.S. Special Envoy. Sudan is high on the list of states likely to normalize ties with Israel. We have no border with Sudan. I don't know if Sudan ever sent soldiers to fight against Israel, but an agreement with Israel can only be good for both countries. Even without the pandemic, the timeline for any additional deals is very tight. There are less than 30 days until the election. Trump would already have less time to devote any personal touch needed for these deals as the campaign enters its final weeks. So the virus has shortened that already tight timeline and perhaps eliminated should the illness take a serious turn. But it did so in a period that was already challenging from the perspective of deal making under pressure. The overall drama of how future deals, as well as how the Bahrain and UAE deals unfolds, remains primarily hostage to the president's illness and to the November elections in two ways. First of all, a brief illness and a Trump victory in November would keep the deals intact and allow for future deals. Or Trump's illness could sway the election in a clear way for Democratic presidential contender Joe Biden. Now that the taboo on Arab normalization deals with Israel has been broken, Biden, if he wins, could stand to reap the benefits of Trump's work, and he could even advance it if the Democratic Party would be in favor of. The biggest risk to the deals is not who is in power in the United States, but the growing specter of electoral chaos in November. By the way, Israelis know what electoral chaos is because we had 3 elections in a year and a half. So Trump's illness, whether brief or serious, only adds additional layers to the expected upheaval and makes its impact seem more certain. The ability of a U.S. president to operate effectively in foreign affairs is dependent on the clear legal recognition of his power, that he is in office. The moment that legality is in doubt, so is any deal or decision or any future deals, including Israel-Arab ones. Right now, the Democrats are already threatening to contest the election, particularly if it's close. So, much like how Israel's political chaos stymied Trump's peace plans and made them take longer time, now you have U.S. political chaos that could play the role of just messing things up here in the Middle East. The danger is not just a delay in the conclusion of any existing deals, but whether there could be any new ones. Bahrain and the UAE have agreed to normalize ties with Israel, but they also agreed to disagree on issues regarding the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. So there's a fairly wide gap between Israel and the leaders Bahrain and the UAE when it comes to the conflict with the Palestinians. Israel holds that it can retain all the settlements, while both of the other countries have been clear they expect a withdrawal to the pre-1967 lines, and that's a problem unto itself. So Israel building in its settlements is at an 8-year low due to the virus. There have been no approvals of settlement-related projects, and it's a serious problem. At the same time, there's been no large violent outbreak either with Gaza or in the West Bank that would test the alliance of the Arab states to their peace deals with Israel. So in this brief time, there has been little to challenge the dreamlike talk of peace between Israel and the UAE and Bahrain and other countries. However, for sure, the situation will not remain static. In the normative course of events, the White House would play a vital role in and seeing that these things happen. So the U.S. can only be effective if there's someone clearly in charge in the White House. So the American election and Trump's illness has a big effect on peace in the Middle East. I'll be back after the break.
Hi everyone, this is Andrea Simento from Jerusalem, inviting you to drop everything and join me on my show, Pull Up a Chair. We'll visit this week's quirky stories, meet fabulous guests, and discover my Israel. Together we'll laugh, shout, and explain the topics that make us say, hey, we've got to talk about that. So get comfortable and pull up a chair with me, Andrea Simento, every Thursday on Israel News Talk Radio.
Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Did you know this psalm and many others were composed by a Jewish shepherd and musician who later became a king? Would you like to know some of the inner meanings of psalms to help you connect with God and strengthen your soul? An exciting and easy-to-read book is now available which will help you do just that. Software for the Soul, Psalms for Everyone, available on Kindle, Audible, and Amazon.com. Software for the Soul.
Modesty at the beach? It isn't just about body image, it's about feeling good. Modest swimsuits, so we don't get burned by the sun.
So we won't get ogled by strangers.
So we'll feel free to express ourselves without the need to expose ourselves.
Let Marcy Modest help you to cover up what you want, how you want.
Made in Israel.
Visit marcymodest.com. That's MARSEA modest.com.
And get a 10% discount on your first purchase.
You're listening to The Jay Shapiro Show.
You're back with Jay Shapiro. In this segment of the program, I want to do what I call under the radar. These are items I think to be of interest to the listeners. They're about Israel, and I try to choose items that are unique to Israel. And the first item is that the Israeli army, some 400 soldiers, have been deployed to Haifa for the next 2 weeks, and are going to staff the wards at the Rambam Hospital. Hundreds of troops from the Home Front Command Search and Rescue Brigade have been deployed to Haifa to help battle the coronavirus pandemic. This is right after the Israeli army, the IDF, announced that the military would be staffing 2 wards at the Rambam Hospital in Haifa. The soldiers from the brigade started work on Monday. The Homefront Command Search and Rescue Brigade is better known for delivering emergency aid to natural disaster zones outside of Israel. But during the current crisis, its troops have been stationed in Israeli cities that have high infection rates. During the first wave earlier this year, soldiers were deployed in Jerusalem together with the Nachal Brigade's Reconnaissance Battalion. And what did they do? They provided food and other essential goods to the elderly and to the infirm. The troops now in Haifa will do the same and will also help local authorities disseminate information and assist in increasing the number of tests, and will open additional drive-in and walk-in facilities in residential neighborhoods where people can arrive to be tested without requiring a doctor's referral. Now, these troops have great experience in working with civilians, particularly outside the country, and they know how to deal with varied communities because the population of Haifa is one of the most diverse. I think the 2 cities in Israel that have the most diverse population are Jerusalem and Haifa. There are Arabs and Jews and secular and religious communities. It's a microcosm of Israel, and they're expected to do the work, and it'll get done. And they indeed may even serve as a model for other authorities. Oh, another thing that the troops will do, they'll transport those diagnosed with the virus and people unable to safely quarantine at home. They'll take them to one of the 3 facilities in Haifa. They'll then check whether relatives have been infected. The Israeli army has placed 100 military medical staff at the Rambam Hospital, has an underground car park that's been turned into a ward to treat up to 770 patients. Doctors and paramedics and nurses and medics from the military will take charge of 2 coronavirus wards for the patients in moderate condition and are expected to start treating patients within 2 weeks to a month. So that's, as far as I'm aware, this is the first time the army will be treating civilians in Israel. But it's interesting that indeed we're in the middle of this crisis, and this particular group of the army, it's called the Home Front Command Search and Rescue Brigade. They have a lot of experience in dealing with all kinds of emergencies. They go outside the country when there are earthquakes and fires and floods and all kinds of things to help other countries. And now they're going to be used here in Israel. They've started to be used already a little bit in Bnei Brak and in Jerusalem, but now in Haifa, that's where the emphasis is. And I think that's something very unique to Israel. Although at the beginning of the crisis, I remember in America they moved a hospital ship to the New York area for a while, so that's something similar. But here they have tremendous experience in doing this kind of thing, so it's really a wonderful thing. You can bring all the arms of the Israeli government and all its forms to help out in this crisis, which is really an extremely serious one. The next subject, unrelated to the first, has to do with something that really affects Israel by the coronavirus, and that's tourism. The second lockdown imposed by the government to curb the spread of the infections is killing the tourist sector. The pandemic struck after a solid decade of constant growth in the number of tourists coming to Israel. For example, the last 3 years, 4.5 million visitors came per year, compared to the previous figure of 3 million. Tourism is a big industry in Israel, and this trend has now stopped. And there once, for example, was a very heavy influx of Christian pilgrims who usually visit the Holy Land regardless of political turmoil. That had a crippling effect on Christian sites of interest, such as the Sea of Galilee. And in the Palestinian Authority, the damage is also really bad. Roughly half the people who used to work in tourism are now working in construction in Israel. That's in the Arab population. In Bethlehem, the Church of Nativity is empty of visitors, and all the hotels in Bethlehem are now closed. Another thing that's hurt by even internal tourism is the museums. They had hoped to offer families activities for the holidays and invested many hours and resources into hiring guides and training them, but the lockdown stopped everything. There are ancillary things having to do with tourism, like travel agencies and the airlines, and they've been given a really knockout blow by this situation. This is a fact. I wanted to share it with the listeners. Another thing affected by the virus, that's something very unique to Israel. The Western Wall Plaza is traditionally jammed with worshippers, tens of thousands, during the intermediate days of Sukkot, which is now, because they have what they call the ceremonial priestly blessing. In Hebrew, it's called the Birchat Kohanim. But due to the virus restrictions, the prayer was instead recited by only 20 worshipers on Monday. 20 when there usually are tens of thousands. But what's interesting, among the 20 worshipers was the U.S. ambassador to Israel, David Friedman. He was an invited guest, and he is what's called a Kohen, that is one of the priestly class. And as I said, it was normally attended by thousands. Friedman tweeted, and he said, and I quote, "I will pray for God's mercy and healing upon all those throughout the world affected by this virus." And together with Rabbi Shmuel Rabinovich, who is the rabbi of the Kotel, and with Israel's two chief rabbis, Friedman also prayed for the health of U.S. President Donald Trump, who's also battling the coronavirus. As a matter of fact, the word was the prayer, which was said in Hebrew, in English translated says, and I quote, "May he who blessed our forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Moses, Aaron, David, and Solomon, send healing to Donald John, son of Fred." That prayer was said by the rabbi of the Kotel, Rabinovich. And he continued, "May the Holy Blessed One overflow with compassion for the president, restore him, cure him, strengthen him, enliven him." So that's very interesting. In Hebrew, when you mention somebody's name in a prayer, in particular, when you call someone up to the reading of the Torah, you mention his name and his father's name, so-and-so, the son of so-and-so. Like my name is Yaakov Moshe ben Yosef. But they had to find a name for President Trump, so he was called Donald John, son of Fred. So let's hope the blessing helps out. As a matter of fact, it was famously said by an atheist. I don't know whether it was a joke, but I remember I heard years ago that an atheist was seen praying, and they asked him why, and he said, "Can't hurt. Maybe there is a God." Anyhow, they prayed at the Western Wall for the American president, and the guy who assisted in the prayer was the American ambassador to Israel. Now that I think of it, I'm thinking out loud, I wonder whether the job of an ambassador represents the president, also represents him to God. Never thought about that before. Maybe that's a second job of an American ambassador to Israel, to represent America to heaven. Who knows? It's an interesting thought. I just wanted to share it with the listeners. So that's a couple of things that are under the radar, and I thought that the listeners would find it of interest. I shall be back after the break.
Are you interested in transforming your life, drawing closer to the Creator, and uncovering the deeper meanings and hidden treasures in the Hebrew Bible?
Then join me, Rav Yitzhak Michelson,
and me, William Hall,
on the Science of Kabbalah, where we are seeking to narrow the gap between what we understand of our physical and spiritual worlds. So make sure to tune in every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Israel time, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, here on Israel News Talk Radio.
You're listening to The Jay Shapiro Show.
You're back with Jay Shapiro. I have a segment on my program which I call Under the Radar, in which I mention things that the listeners may not be paying attention to, and they're generally things of general interest. However, it is something that's been under the radar that is extremely serious, and that is the relationship between Israel and the United States and Turkey. When I first came to Israel, Turkey was looked upon as a real close ally of Israel, and every year thousands of Israelis would go to Turkey, even members of my own family, for their vacation. Now, something has happened. Turkey has changed under its present leadership, and it's got to be watched to see the effect it's going to have. For example, the U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo paid a visit to the Eastern Mediterranean last month, and he met with Greek leaders. He also was in Cyprus on September 12th. Cyprus is divided between two sections, one of which is controlled by Greece and the other by Turkey. Now, Turkey has been threatening Greece and Cyprus and causing tensions in the Eastern Mediterranean, right next to Israel. Now, because of this, Greece, Cyprus, Egypt, and Israel have been working very closely, particularly on things that can be developed in the Mediterranean. Pompeo's trip appeared to illustrate a new U.S. commitment to listening to Greece and to Cyprus rather than appeasing Turkey, which has been aggressive. The trip apparently surprised Ankara, Turkey, the capital, where leaders have gotten used to bashing the United States while also having a direct line to the White House. Most recently, Pompeo aimed criticism at Turkey for fueling tensions in Azerbaijan and Armenia because Turkey has said it could support Azerbaijan militarily. He also expressed concern that Syrian mercenary fighters are known for their religious extremism have been recruited in Turkey to fight Armenia. Armenia is a Christian country. Turkey was, for many years, since after the First World War, although a Muslim country, has been acting in a more or less secular way. But that's changed under the present administration. So what's happened is that for the first time, the United States appears to be confronting Turkey over its fueling of conflicts across this entire region in which we in Israel live. In the last year, for example, Turkey has invaded Syria, bombed Iraq, threatened Greece with forcing refugees to cross their border. It's raised the tensions all over the place. It signed deals with Russia, sent arms and Syrians to Libya illegally, threatened to liberate Jerusalem from Israel's control, threatened the United Arab Emirates because it made the agreement with Israel. Turkey has hosted Hamas terrorists and encouraged war between Azerbaijan and Armenia, and continued to put journalists and opposition politicians in prison. But there are apparently thousands of people opposed to the Turkish regime in Turkey who have been put into prison. So Pompeo, the U.S. Secretary of State, has also been critical of Turkey over something that really upset the Christians. That is, it turned the historic church, which is and also a museum called Hagia Sophia, back into a mosque, from a church into a mosque. Pompeo has also said Turkey would not be allowed to slaughter Kurds. So the State Department also critiqued Turkey's president for hosting Hamas terrorists. So what's happened now is the American Secretary of State has taken a trip to Cyprus and Greece And it sort of apparently has upset Turkey because they began to realize that the United States has finally changed its tack on Turkey. Instead of the double game where the U.S. coddles Turkey with some diplomats but expresses concern with others, the fact that the U.S. Secretary of State purposely avoided meeting Turkish officials when he came here, that apparently really bothers them. Over the years, the Turkey officials have gotten used to meeting with Russia and Iran while always bashing European and Western leaders. Turkey does not take the West seriously, apparently, and thinks that slandering the U.S. and France and Germany and Austria and Holland and other countries is how to get progress from Western officials. Turkish pro-government media, for example, regularly bashes the United States while not criticizing Russia and Iran the same way. And Turkey's foreign minister recently threatened U.S. Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi. Turkey has also bashed Joe Biden for some critical comments that he made. And the foreign minister has called Europe spoiled, racist children and threatened to kick them into the sea, especially when he criticizes Greece. He's very harsh. It's hard to find a week in the last year that Turkish officials have not attacked some Western country while at the same time demanding they work with Turkey. Now what's happened is the Pompeo, the U.S. Secretary of State, who is essentially the top U.S. diplomat, who's also one of the key figures in the Trump administration, he's more critical of Turkey. That the United States State Department has slammed Turkey for hosting Hamas and also for sending Syrians to other countries to make trouble. It appears to show that Washington understands that Turkish aggression is harming U.S. interests and allies, and that includes Israel. So what's happened is that for years the pro-Turkey lobby in Washington sold the White House on the theory that Turkey would work with the U.S. against Iran. However, Turkey supported trade with Iran and opposed U.S. sanctions. Turkey regularly hosts Iranian delegations and greets them warmly. Turkey works with Iran and Russia in Syria to essentially oppose the U.S. interests. Turkey accuses the U.S. of working with terrorists in Syria, but has never used similar language against Iran. So Pompeo's high-level visits to both Greece and Cyprus appeared to show a shift in attitude. He also visited Israel, but that was a short trip, apparently having to do with other things. So the Turkey has sunk a lot of political support in bashing Biden and supporting Trump. It has gambled since 2016 that it could interfere in U.S. domestic politics to get the results it wanted. When the Turkish president, for example, visited the United States in 2017, Turkish security even beat up U.S. peaceful protesters in Washington, a sign that Turkey felt it controlled Washington. So Turkey has been misbehaving, and it's starting to come to the surface. And we here, as I mentioned at the beginning, had a warm relationship with Turkey, and it was also spoken of about 15 or 20 years ago that Israel would cooperate with Turkey on all kind of things having to do with searching for oil and for natural gas in the Mediterranean. And as I said, Turkey was one of the favorite visiting places for Israeli tourists. But now it seems under the present administration in Turkey, it's moved very far toward, interestingly enough, I was about to say move to the right, but it's not a question of right and left in Turkey. It's a question of either being a secular country or becoming more fundamentalist Islam. And what's happening is, it is indeed moving in that direction. I think, for example, the changing of a major church in Turkey, the Hagia Sophia, into a mosque is really a slap in the face to the Christians, but it was done very brazenly, and somehow it sort of got under the headlines. People don't realize that. It's not an attack only on the Christians, it's an attack on the West. The West is essentially a Judeo-Christian society, and this is an attack on that society. So it's something that, as I said at the outset, is under the radar, but it's something that's extremely serious and it foretells a lot of trouble in the future, especially for Israel, because whether we like it or not, we are here in the Middle East, and everything that happens around us affects us. So, and we, of course, are a strong ally of the United States and of the West. So that's something that we have to keep paying attention to. Thanks for listening. Thanks. Jay Shapiro is signing off.
If you love Israel News Talk Radio, then you'll love our Facebook page. We keep you up to date on what's happening in Israel, plus little surprise treasures that we don't share on the radio. Go now to follow us on Facebook. Just look for the Israel News Talk Radio Facebook page, and don't forget to subscribe and follow us by clicking on the like button. We post great stuff there that you'll want to share. Israel News Talk Radio on Facebook and Israel News Radio on Twitter.
If you're hearing this message, everyone else can too. Advertise with Israel News Talk Radio and get your message out to people. We'll build a personalized package for you. Contact advertising at israelnewstalkradio.com.
Straight talk from Israel. You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
Hey, this is Jake in Anchorage, Alaska, and I love listening to all the super interesting interviews and up-to-date information on what's happening in Israel.
Hello, this is Anna King, originally from London, now living in Israel. And what can I say? Israel News Talk Radio is my cup of tea.
My name is Bhaskar. I'm from India, and I love listening because you get to know the truth and wonderful voices from this lovely country.
Mom! Okay, wait a minute. Hi, this is Chava Dax, and I'm calling from the rolling hills of Ma'ale Adumim, just north of Jerusalem. I always listen to Israel News Talk Radio to get all the latest news and commentary and to keep me up to date every day.
This is Sarah Dax from Ma'ale Adumim, and I'm 12. I wish Israel News Talk Radio was boring so my mom wouldn't listen to it all the time. Mom!
You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
News, opinion, and more. You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.